The clock strikes midnight, and somewhere in the world a man sits at his kitchen table staring at a letter that arrived 3 hours ago. His business is ruined. 20 years of work gone. His wife doesn't know yet. His children are asleep upstairs, dreaming innocent dreams of a future that now seems impossible. In 12 hours, he will have to tell them that everything has changed. But what if I told you that this man possesses a power so extraordinary, so contrary to everything you've been taught about the nature of reality, that by tomorrow morning, that letter will never have been written? Not because he will forget it, not because he will cope with it, but because it will literally never have existed. You see, there is a secret about time that the world has forgotten. Time is not what you think it is. The past is not fixed. Your memories are not recordings. And tonight, before you sleep, you can reach back into yesterday and change what happened there. You can edit your history like an author editing a manuscript. You can revise your past until it becomes the foundation for the future you desire. This is not fantasy. This is not metaphor. This is the most practical thing you can ever learn. The man at the kitchen table does not yet know this secret, but by the end of this night, if he learns what you are about to learn, he will go to sleep with that letter transformed in his imagination. And when he wakes, the world will remember a different story. His bank account will reflect a different reality. His wife will kiss him good morning with no knowledge of any catastrophe, because in the only reality that matters, the reality of consciousness itself, no catastrophe ever occurred. This sounds impossible because you have been taught that the past is beyond your reach. You have been conditioned to believe that what happened, happened, and no power on earth can change it. But consciousness is not bound by the rules of earth. Consciousness operates by different laws entirely, and consciousness is the only reality there is. Every night, millions of people go to sleep carrying the weight of their mistakes, their failures, their regrets. They believe these burdens are permanent fixtures in their lives, written in stone, carved into the immutable record of time. They accept their past as the foundation of their future, never knowing that this acceptance is a choice, not a necessity. They never discover that before sleep each night, they hold in their hands the power to rewrite their entire history. What you call the past exists only in consciousness. What you remember happened only because consciousness holds that memory. Change the consciousness and you change what happened. This is not philosophy. This is the fundamental nature of reality itself. Everything you see, everything you experience, everything you remember, all of it exists as states of consciousness and nothing more. The technique is simple, though its implications will shake the very foundations of your understanding of what it means to be human. Tonight, when you prepare for sleep, you will not simply review your day as it occurred. You will revise it. It means there are no victims, no helpless circumstances, no external powers controlling your life. It means that everything you have experienced, you have created through the assumptions you have held in consciousness. It means you have always been far more powerful than you ever dared imagine. Yet this same realization is ultimately liberating. If you created your past unconsciously, you can now create your future consciously. If consciousness shaped your history without your awareness, consciousness can now reshape that history with your full participation. The power that created your problems is the same power that can solve them. The consciousness that assumed limitation can now assume freedom. As you begin to live from this understanding, your entire relationship with time changes. The past stops being a burden and becomes raw material. The future stops being a source of anxiety and becomes a canvas for your creativity. The present moment becomes the point of power where consciousness operates to create whatever experience you choose. You begin to see other people differently as well. Everyone you meet is consciousness in individual expression, creating their own experience according to their own assumptions, living in the world they have imagined into existence. Your judgments of others soften as you recognize that they, like you, are simply experiencing the contents of their own consciousness reflected back to them as external circumstances. Your compassion deepens as you understand that everyone who appears to be suffering is simply unconscious of their own creative power. Your patience increases as you realize that everyone is doing the best they can with their current level of understanding. Your love expands as you recognize yourself, consciousness itself, expressing through every person you encounter. The technique of revision becomes not just a tool for correcting past mistakes, but a way of life based on the recognition that consciousness is the only reality. You begin to live each day knowing that tonight you can revise anything that falls short of your ideal. This knowledge fills you with confidence to take risks, to speak your truth, to reach for your dreams, because you know that any missteps can be corrected through the power of revision. Yet paradoxically, as your confidence in your power to revise increases, your need for revision decreases. Knowing that you can correct any mistake makes you less likely to make mistakes in the first place. Understanding that consciousness creates reality makes you more careful about what you hold in consciousness. Recognizing your power makes you more willing to exercise it wisely. The world you experience begins to reflect this new level of consciousness. Harmony replaces conflict. Success replaces struggle. Love replaces fear. Not because you have learned to cope with a difficult world, but because consciousness has created a different world, a world that matches your revised understanding of who you are and what is possible. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, you stand at the threshold of a new life. Behind you lies a past that you now understand was created by consciousness operating unconsciously. Before you lies a future that consciousness can create deliberately, purposefully, in alignment with your deepest desires and highest vision. The technique I have shared with you is not theory but practice. It is not philosophy but technology. It is not hope but power. The same power that has been creating your experience all along, now placed consciously in your hands. You have learned that consciousness is the only reality, that imagination creates everything you experience, that the past is as malleable as the future. You have discovered that every night offers you the opportunity to revise your history, to create the foundation for the life you truly desire to live. The choice before you is simple yet profound. Will you continue to live unconsciously, accepting whatever experience consciousness creates by default? Or will you assume your rightful place as the conscious creator of your own reality, using the power of revision to craft a past worthy of the future you desire? I tell you now, as I have told thousands before you, you are not a victim of circumstances. You are not limited by your history. You are not bound by the beliefs that others have taught you about what is possible. You are consciousness itself, temporary, housed in individual expression, possessing the full creative power of the infinite. Tonight, when you close your eyes, you will either accept the day as it was, or you will dare to revise it into what you know it should have been. Tomorrow, you will either wake to build upon the foundation of limitation, or you will wake to discover that consciousness has rearranged your world to match your revision. The choice has always been yours. It will always be yours. The only question that has ever mattered is this: what will you choose to assume is true? For whatever you assume with feeling becomes your experience, and whatever you revise with persistence becomes your past. Go now and revise well. Your future and your past await your decision. Every moment that brought you pain, every word you wish you had not spoken, every opportunity you missed, you will imaginatively live through these moments again, but this time you will live them as you wish they had been. But here is the crucial point that separates this from mere daydreaming or wishful thinking. You must enter into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You must experience the revised event not as something you hope happened, but as something that did happen. You must feel the satisfaction, the relief, the joy of the corrected experience as if it were as real as any memory you carry. There once lived a man who understood this secret more completely than perhaps anyone who ever walked the earth. Born on a small island in the Caribbean at the beginning of the 20th century, this man would grow up to make claims so audacious that they bordered on blasphemy. He would stand before thousands of people and declare, without hesitation, without qualification, that they were God. Not like God, not connected to God, but actually, literally, God itself expressing as individual consciousness. This man taught that your imagination is not a tool you use, it is the very power by which the universe creates itself. He showed people that when they imagined, they were not escaping reality, but creating it. And he revealed the most revolutionary secret of all, that this creative power operates outside of time, which means it can reshape what you call the past just as easily as it shapes what you call the future. The establishment of his time dismissed him. Religious leaders condemned him. Intellectuals ignored him. But thousands of ordinary people discovered that his techniques worked in ways that defied every rule they had been taught about how reality operates. They found that when they revised their past according to his instructions, the world around them changed to match their revisions, not their perception of the world itself. This man taught that consciousness is the only reality, and that everything else, every person, every event, every physical object, exists only as states of consciousness. From this understanding flowed the most practical technique ever devised for reshaping human experience, the technique of revision. Each night before sleep, his students would imaginatively relive the events of their day, but with every unpleasant occurrence revised to match their desires. A woman would revise an argument with her husband, imagining instead a loving conversation. A man would revise a business failure, feeling instead the satisfaction of success. A parent would revise a child's illness, experiencing instead the joy of perfect health. And then, night after night, these people would discover that their revised imaginations had somehow become their actual experience. The world called this impossible, but the world did not understand the nature of consciousness. The world believed that consciousness was produced by the brain, confined to the skull, limited by the body. But this man knew better. He knew that consciousness is the foundation of everything that exists, and that what we call the physical world is nothing more than consciousness crystallized into seemingly solid form. When you truly understand this, everything changes. The past stops being your master and becomes your raw material. Your memories stop being prison cells and become the clay from which you sculpt your ideal life. Time stops being a river, carrying you helplessly forward, and becomes an ocean in which you can swim in any direction you choose. The technique requires no special training, no years of study, no complex rituals or expensive tools. It requires only the willingness to assume that what you desire to be true is true, and to feel the reality of that assumption until it becomes more real to you than what your senses report. But make no mistake, this is not about positive thinking or self-hypnosis or any of the pale imitations that bear its name. This is about recognizing that consciousness is the substance from which everything is made, including what you call your past. When you change consciousness, you change everything that flows from it. When you revise your past in consciousness, you revise it everywhere that matters. Tonight, when you lie down to sleep, you have a choice to make. You can accept the day as it occurred, carrying its burdens into your dreams and waking tomorrow to build upon the same foundation of limitation. Or you can exercise the godlike power that is your birthright as a conscious being and sculpt your past into the perfect foundation for the future you desire. The choice is yours, and it is more momentous than you realize. For what you do with your past tonight will determine not only your tomorrow, but your very understanding of what it means to be human, what it means to be alive, and what it means to be the operant power in your own experience. The man at the kitchen table still sits in his despair, unaware that salvation lies not in changing his circumstances, but in changing the consciousness that created those circumstances. He does not yet know that the letter in his hands exists only because he has assumed it exists, and that he can unassume it just as easily. But you know this now. You understand the secret. The question is, what will you do with it? Understanding the power is one thing. Learning to wield it with precision is another entirely. Revision is not a casual exercise in wishful thinking. It is a technology of consciousness, as exact in its application as any scientific instrument, as reliable in its results as any physical law. But like all technologies, it must be operated according to specific principles or it will not work. The first principle is timing. Revision must be performed in that sacred threshold between waking and sleeping, when consciousness becomes fluid and malleable. This is not an arbitrary requirement, but a fundamental necessity. During your ordinary waking hours, consciousness is rigidly focused on the physical world, locked into the patterns of habitual thinking that maintain your current reality. But as you approach sleep, consciousness begins to loosen its grip on the familiar, becoming receptive to new impressions, new possibilities, new truths. This twilight state has been recognized by mystics throughout history as the doorway between worlds. Modern science calls it the hypnagogic state, but names matter less than understanding. In this state, the boundaries between imagination and reality become permeable. What you imagine here carries a power that imagination does not possess at any other time. This is when consciousness can reach back through time and reshape what was. The second principle is specificity. You cannot revise your entire life in a single session. You must select particular events, particular moments, particular conversations or encounters that you wish to change. Begin with the immediate past, yesterday, last week, last month. Choose events that still carry emotional charge, situations that still disturb your peace when you remember them. These are the memories that are most alive in consciousness and therefore most responsive to revision. Take that argument you had 3 days ago. In your ordinary memory, harsh words were spoken, feelings were hurt, perhaps a relationship was damaged. But in revision, you will live through that same situation again, only this time you will experience it as you wish it had been. You will hear yourself speaking with wisdom and love. You will feel the other person responding with understanding and appreciation. You will experience the harmony and mutual respect that you desire to exist. But here is where most people fail in their attempts at revision. They try to revise from the outside, like watching a movie of their improved past. This accomplishes nothing. True revision must be experienced from the inside, through your own eyes, with your own senses, feeling every sensation as vividly as you felt the original event. You must not observe the revision, you must live it. The third principle is the most crucial. You must enter into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. This is not about believing that your revision will someday become true. This is about knowing that it is true right now and always has been true. You must feel the satisfaction, the relief, the joy of the corrected experience as if there had never been any other version. The feeling is the secret that transforms imagination from fantasy into creative power. When you revise that argument, you do not imagine how good it would feel if it had gone differently. You feel how good it feels that it did go differently. When you revise that failure, you do not hope for success. You feel the satisfaction of having succeeded. The distinction is subtle but absolute. One is wishful thinking, the other is creative power in operation. The fourth principle is persistence. A single revision session rarely produces immediate external changes, though the internal change is often instantaneous. You must return to your revised version night after night until it becomes more real to you than the original memory. You must persist until your consciousness naturally defaults to the revised version when recalling that event. Only when the revision has completely replaced the original in your consciousness will the external world reorganize itself to match your new inner reality. Some events require only a few nights of revision before consciousness accepts the new version as truth. Others, particularly traumatic experiences or deeply ingrained patterns, may require weeks or months of patient work. But time is irrelevant to consciousness. Whether an event happened yesterday or 20 years ago makes no difference to the power of revision. Consciousness recognizes no distinction between recent and distant past. All memories exist equally in the eternal now of awareness. The fifth principle is detachment from the how. You do not need to understand the mechanism by which consciousness reshapes reality. You do not need to figure out how your revision will manifest in the physical world. Your job is simply to revise faithfully and persist until the revision feels completely natural. Consciousness will handle the rest through means that often surpass human understanding. What science has discovered about memory provides a fascinating glimpse into why revision might work so effectively. Researchers have found that memories are not fixed recordings stored in the brain like files on a computer. Instead, each time you remember something, your brain reconstructs that memory from scattered fragments of information. And each time you reconstruct a memory, you have the opportunity to alter it. Every act of remembering is actually an act of recreating. Your brain takes the general outlines of what happened and fills in details based on your current state of mind, your present beliefs, your emotional condition at the moment of recall. This is why eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable, why different people remember the same event in completely different ways, why your own memories of childhood change as you age, but consciousness operates at a much deeper level than brain chemistry. While the brain may reconstruct memories each time they are accessed, consciousness determines what there is to reconstruct. When you revise an event in consciousness, you are not merely altering your brain's recording of what happened, you are changing what actually happened in the realm where all events truly exist. Consider how malleable your memories already are without any conscious intervention. You have noticed perhaps that certain memories from your past seem to change over time. Details that you once remembered clearly become fuzzy. Conversations that you were certain happened one way suddenly seem to have happened differently. Events that once seemed significant fade into insignificance, while moments you barely noticed at the time become pivotal in your personal narrative. This natural fluidity of memory points to a profound truth. The past is not fixed in the way you have been taught to believe. Your past is constantly being recreated by consciousness, updated and revised based on your present understanding, your current beliefs, your evolving sense of who you are. Conscious revision simply takes control of this natural process and directs it toward the past you prefer to have lived. The moments just before sleep are particularly powerful for this work because the analytical mind begins to quiet down, allowing deeper levels of consciousness to become active. The critical faculties that normally insist on the impossibility of changing the past lose their grip, and consciousness becomes receptive to new versions of truth. This is why so many profound insights come to people in the drowsy moments before sleep, why solutions to problems often appear in dreams, why the hypnagogic state has been used for centuries by those who understand its power. Modern neuroscience has identified specific brainwave patterns associated with this transitional state. The brain shifts from the beta waves of normal waking consciousness to the alpha and theta waves associated with deep relaxation and creative insight. In this state, the brain becomes more plastic, more open to new neural pathways, more capable of forming new associations and releasing old patterns. But again, consciousness transcends brain activity. While science can measure the correlates of consciousness in the brain, consciousness itself remains mysterious, operating by laws that physics has barely begun to explore. When you engage in revision during the hypnagogic state, you are working directly with consciousness itself, not merely with brain chemistry or neural networks. The stories of successful revision stretch far beyond what conventional wisdom would consider possible. A woman revises a car accident in which her brother died. The next morning she receives a phone call from that same brother, alive and well, calling to check on her after what he describes as a minor fender bender that left everyone unharmed. The accident she revised away was the accident that actually occurred. The minor incident he remembers is the revision she lived through night after night until it became more real than death itself. A businessman revises the failure of his company night after night, experiencing the success he desired instead of the bankruptcy he faced. Weeks later, he discovers that accounting errors had been found, investors had remained committed, and his business had never actually failed at all. The failure existed only in his original consciousness. When he changed his consciousness, the failure simply disappeared from his experience. A mother revises her child's diagnosis of a terminal illness, feeling night after night the joy of perfect health instead of the despair of watching her child suffer. Medical tests that previously showed disease now show no trace of any problem. Doctors call it a miraculous recovery, but the mother knows better. There was never any disease to recover from. The disease existed only in the consciousness she has now revised away. These accounts sound impossible to minds trained in the conventional understanding of reality. How can past events be changed? How can physical conditions simply disappear? How can the effects of consciousness reach backward through time to alter what already occurred? The answer lies in understanding that consciousness is not confined by time, not limited by space, not bound by the laws that govern physical matter. From the perspective of consciousness, there is no past or future. There is only the eternal now in which all possibilities exist simultaneously. What you call the past is simply consciousness focused on certain patterns of experience. Change the focus of consciousness and you change which version of the past becomes real in your experience. The technique appears simple because it is simple. The results appear miraculous because you have forgotten the miracle of your own nature as conscious beings. You are not victims of circumstance, not prisoners of history, not bound by the limitations that seem so absolute in the physical world. You are consciousness itself, temporarily focused into individual expression, temporarily experiencing yourself as separate from the power that creates all experience. When you revise your past, you are not breaking the laws of reality. You are operating according to the highest law of all, the law by which consciousness creates every experience you have ever had. You are simply taking conscious control of a process that has been operating unconsciously throughout your entire life. You are awakening to your true nature as the operant power in your own experience, the author of your own story, the God of your own universe. Tonight, when you prepare for sleep, you will have the opportunity to put this understanding into practice. You will select some event from your recent past that you wish had unfolded differently. You will lie down, enter that drowsy state between waking and sleeping, and begin to revise. You will live through that event again, but this time you will experience it as your heart desires it to have been, and you will persist in this revision until it becomes more real to you too, and any memory you have ever carried. The most startling confirmation of these principles comes from an unexpected source, the laboratories of quantum physicists. Scientists peering into the fundamental nature of reality have discovered something that would have been dismissed as mystical nonsense just decades ago. Consciousness appears to be woven into the very fabric of existence itself. In quantum mechanics, particles exist in what scientists call superposition, meaning they exist in all possible states simultaneously until the moment they are observed. The act of observation of conscious awareness appears to collapse these infinite possibilities into a single definite reality. The observer effect demonstrates that consciousness and physical reality are not separate phenomena, but intimately connected aspects of a single system. But the implications go even deeper. Quantum entanglement shows that particles can be connected across vast distances, affecting each other instantaneously, regardless of the space between them. Time itself becomes fluid at the quantum level, with effects sometimes appearing to precede their causes. The rigid boundaries between past, present, and future that govern everyday experience begin to dissolve when examined through the lens of quantum physics. What the physicists have discovered in their laboratories, mystics have known for millennia. Consciousness is fundamental to reality, not an accidental byproduct of it. The universe is not a machine that somehow developed the capacity for awareness. Awareness is the substance from which the universe is made. This understanding transforms revision from an impossible fantasy into a practical application of the deepest principles governing existence itself. When quantum physicists speak of parallel universes, they're describing mathematically what consciousness knows intuitively, that all possibilities exist simultaneously in what they call the quantum field. What you experience as your life is simply consciousness focused on one particular thread of possibility. Revision works by shifting consciousness to a different thread, one where the events you desire to have happened actually did happen. The measurement problem in quantum physics, the question of why observation causes superposition to collapse into definite reality, finds its answer in understanding consciousness as the fundamental creative force. Consciousness does not merely observe reality. Consciousness creates reality through the act of observation. Every moment of awareness is an act of creation, selecting from infinite possibilities the specific experience that will manifest. This is why the state of consciousness just before sleep is so crucial for revision. As ordinary waking consciousness fades, you enter a state more closely aligned with the quantum field itself, where all possibilities remain fluid and accessible. In this state, consciousness can reach across the apparent barriers of time and space to select a different path from the infinite menu of possibilities that exist in the quantum realm. The practical implications are staggering. If consciousness creates reality through observation, then changing what consciousness observes changes what reality becomes. If the past exists as a set of possibilities rather than fixed facts, then revision becomes not only possible but inevitable once you understand the principles involved. Tonight, as you prepare for your appointment with eternity, you step into the role that has always been yours, the conscious creator of your own experience. This is not a metaphor or a spiritual platitude. This is the literal truth of what you are and what you have always been, whether you recognized it or not. The practice itself is beautifully simple. As you lie down to sleep, allow your body to relax completely while keeping your mind gently alert. Review the day that has just passed, but not as a passive observer reviewing facts. Review it as an artist reviews a first draft, ready to make improvements. When you encounter a moment that displeases you, a conversation that went poorly, an opportunity you missed, a reaction you regret, pause in your review. Now, imaginatively live through that moment again, but this time experience it as you wish it had occurred. Hear the words you wish you had spoken. Feel the confidence you wish you had felt. Experience the successful outcome you desired. The key is to live the revision, not merely visualize it. You must feel yourself in the scene, speaking those words, making those choices, experiencing those outcomes. You must feel the satisfaction of having handled the situation perfectly, the joy of having said exactly what needed to be said, the peace of having acted from your highest self. If you find your mind wandering back to the original version of events, gently but firmly redirect it to your revision. You are training consciousness to prefer the revised version over the original. This requires patience and persistence, but consciousness is remarkably trainable once you understand that you are its master, not its victim. Continue this process until you reach the end of your day, having revised every moment that brought you anything less than joy. Then fall asleep in the satisfaction of a day perfectly lived, feeling grateful for all the wonderful things that happened, the revised wonderful things that happened. Some nights you may choose to focus on a single event, revising it over and over until it becomes completely real in your consciousness. Other nights you may scan through weeks or months or even years, systematically revising patterns of experience that no longer serve you. Trust your intuition to guide you to the memories that most need your attention. The morning after your first serious attempt at revision, you may notice subtle changes in how you feel about the events you revised. They will seem less important, less charged with negative emotion. People involved in those original events may treat you differently, as if they too remember the revised versions rather than the originals. As you continue this practice night after night, the changes become more pronounced. Opportunities appear that could not have existed if the original versions of events were true. Relationships improve in ways that make sense only if the revised conversations actually took place. Your external circumstances begin to align with the reality of your revisions rather than the reality of your original experiences. This is not wishful thinking taking effect. This is consciousness reshaping reality to match its new content. As you change what you hold in consciousness, the world around you changes to reflect what consciousness now contains. The people in your life begin to remember what you remember. The records of your achievements reflect what you have revised yourself as having achieved. The world reorganizes itself around the new truth you have established in consciousness. But with this power comes a responsibility that few are prepared to accept. If you can revise your past, if consciousness creates reality, if you are truly the operant power in your own experience, then you bear complete responsibility for everything you have ever experienced. Every limitation, every failure, every moment of suffering, all of it existed only because consciousness held it as true. This realization can be overwhelming at first,